I didn't realize I'd been carrying my family's weight until I felt what life was like without it.
Looking back, I think I was born into responsibility. It wasn't assigned to me, it was simply mine to carry. When people talk about childhood, they remember playdates, summer camps, and school dances. I remember balancing my mom's checkbook at 10 years old and cooking dinner while other kids played outside. I was Julia Morris, the girl who got things done because no one else would. When I was 9, my dad passed away from a heart attack, and that's the day our house stopped feeling like home. My mom, Patricia, crumbled under the weight of grief. My younger brother, Ethan, was only 5 then, too young to understand the gaping hole left behind. But I understood. I understood far too much for a child. My mom used to say, "You're my little soldier, Julia. You keep us marching forward." At the time, it felt like love. Now I know it was an early drafting into a war I didn't enlist for. While Ethan was allowed to remain the carefree boy, I became the second adult in the house. I woke up early to pack his lunches. I helped him with his homework while my mom lay on the couch staring at the ceiling. I worked my first part-time job at a local bookstore when I was 15, using my paycheck to keep the electricity on because my mom had forgotten to pay the bill again. I didn't complain. I didn't know I could. As I grew older, the weight of those silent expectations only deepened. Family emergencies, Julia would handle it. Financial shortfalls, Julia would cover it. Every missed opportunity in my life was another brick in the fortress I built to protect Ethan and my mom. Ethan was always the golden boy, though. He had freedom, support, and grace for every mistake. I remember one afternoon when Ethan crashed my mom's car. I had spent the whole summer working at a diner to help pay for that car's insurance. But when it happened, my mom wrapped him in her arms, whispering, "Thank God you're safe, sweetheart. Don't worry about the car." I had been in the background, holding my breath, waiting for even a glance of recognition that maybe my hard work mattered. It never came. I told myself it was okay. He was the youngest. He needed more support. That's what I believed for years, because I was desperate to make their actions make sense. When I graduated high school, my acceptance letter to the University of Washington came with a scholarship. My mom barely glanced at it. "Can you stay local? Ethan still needs you," she said. And so I gave up my dream of going out of state. I took night classes while working full-time at a property management office. I told myself the sacrifice was temporary. But temporary stretched into years. I became a real estate agent. I became successful. I made sure my mother's rent was paid on time every month. I co-signed Ethan's first car loan. I helped him get his first apartment. Every time they stumbled, I caught them before they hit the ground. But no matter how much I gave, no matter how much I achieved, I always felt like I was standing outside the door to my own family, knocking, waiting to be let in. Even during holidays, I wasn't the daughter, I was the event planner. I organized every Thanksgiving, every birthday party, every 4th of July barbecue, making sure everyone else had a good time while I quietly cleaned up behind them. When Ethan forgot our mom's birthday one year, I covered for him, bought a gift on his behalf, and told Mom it was from him. She cried and said, "You've always been such a thoughtful son, Ethan." She didn't even realize it was me who had remembered. Still, I kept pushing forward. I convinced myself that if I just worked harder, if I just gave a little more, I'd finally hear her say, "Julia, I'm proud of you. Julia, you matter." I kept chasing that validation like a horizon that always stayed just out of reach. And then last year, when I bought my own house in Seattle, a 3-bedroom home with a little backyard, I thought maybe, just maybe, this was it. This was the moment I would finally be seen. I wasn't buying this house to escape them. I was buying it so I could build something we could all share. A place where we could finally feel like a family again. But life has a cruel way of showing you the truth when you're finally brave enough to look. That house didn't bring us closer. It brought me face to face with what I had been too afraid to admit. The love I was desperately searching for might never have been there in the first place. All I ever wanted was for my mom to say she was proud of me without a but at the end. I spent most of my life waiting for that one moment, a genuine, unsolicited, unprompted recognition from my mother. Not the polite nods, not the transactional thank yous. I wanted her to look at me the way she looked at Ethan, as if I was the best thing to ever happen to her. When I bought my home, I told myself this was my chance. Maybe the house would finally earn me a seat at the table, not as the family's fixer, but as someone they actually admired. So, I made a plan, a perfect one. My mother's 60th birthday was coming up, and I saw it as my golden opportunity. I wasn't just going to throw her a party. I was going to create a celebration so unforgettable that even she couldn't overlook me. I rented a local event space with panoramic waterfront views. I hired her favorite florist to design custom arrangements, pale pink roses and soft white lilies, delicate, understated, just like she always preferred. I booked a private chef who specialized in Mediterranean cuisine because I remembered her once mentioning she loved Greek food during a random Sunday drive years ago. She probably didn't even remember saying it, but I did. I spent weeks organizing every detail, custom invitations embossed in gold, a video montage of her life, and a surprise guest list that included long-lost friends I personally tracked down. Every ounce of energy went into this event because for once, I wanted her to see me, not the responsible daughter, not the human wallet, but Julia, the woman who cared enough to remember the things that mattered. And then there was Ethan. I knew Mom would be heartbroken if he couldn't make it, so I called him in New York. He said flights were too expensive and his schedule was packed. Without hesitation, I offered to cover his airfare, his hotel, even a new suit if he needed one. I told myself it was worth it. Seeing her face light up when he walked into the party would be priceless. I wanted that reaction from her so badly, but if I couldn't get it, at least I could deliver the son she adored. When I wired him the money, he sent me a text with a thumbs-up emoji. No thanks. No, you didn't have to. Just a thumbs up. I swallowed the bitterness and moved on. This was about the bigger picture. In the weeks leading up to the party, I barely slept. I worked overtime to cover the costs, skipped happy hours, and turned down weekend trips with friends. Every spare dollar, every free moment funneled straight into the birthday that would finally change everything. I envisioned it so clearly, the hugs, the smiles, the quiet pull to the side where she'd whisper, "You really outdid yourself, Julia. I'm proud of you."
When I shared my plans with friends, they were less than enthusiastic. My best friend Leah gave me that knowing look over coffee one morning and said, "You know, Jules, you don't have to keep auditioning for their love. They should see you already."
I laughed it off. It's not an audition, it's family. This is just my way of showing up. But deep down, I knew Leah was right. I was desperately hoping the next grand gesture would finally unlock the affection I had spent decades chasing. As the party drew closer, I doubled down on my efforts. I hand-picked the wine selection. I ordered a custom cake white velvet with fresh strawberries, her favorite. I even arranged for her favorite piano piece to be played live during dinner. I thought about every tiny detail except one, whether or not they ever truly wanted to see me. A week before the event, I visited my mom to deliver the formal invitation. She barely glanced at the envelope. "Oh, you don't have to go through all that trouble," she said casually. A simple dinner would have been fine. But that wasn't true. A simple dinner wouldn't have earned me the spotlight. A simple dinner wouldn't have changed my place in our family. I needed this to be big. I needed it to be undeniable. When I mentioned that Ethan would be flying in, her face finally lit up. That moment stayed with me for days. It was the first genuine smile I had seen from her in a long time, and it wasn't because of me, it was because of him. I kept telling myself it was okay. That's what mattered, right? Her happiness. Even if I wasn't the source of it, what I didn't realize then was that I had built this elaborate celebration not to make her happy, but to finally be chosen. To finally be enough.
I didn't know I was pouring my soul into a moment that would never come. I was chasing approval like it was a finish line that didn't exist. And somewhere in the middle of flower arrangements and guest lists, I forgot to ask myself, when would it be enough for me? I thought if I gave them everything, they'd finally choose me. Turns out they already had, and it wasn't me. The weeks leading up to my mother's birthday were a blur of spreadsheets, emails, and late-night lists. Planning this party became my full-time second job. I obsessed over every detail, from the color palette of the floral centerpieces to the seating arrangement that would keep longtime frenemies on opposite ends of the room. I wasn't just trying to throw a beautiful party, I was trying to build the perfect memory. One they couldn't ignore. One they'd finally associate with me. I told myself it would be worth it. I told myself that when she walked into that sunlit banquet room overlooking Puget Sound, her eyes would light up, and maybe, just maybe, she'd finally see me. I covered all the costs. Venue deposit on my card. Private catering with a customized Mediterranean menu, charged it. Flights for Ethan and his fiancée from New York. I didn't blink. I even booked them a premium suite at a waterfront hotel because Ethan said the Airbnb I found wasn't nice enough. Every time I made another payment, I heard Leah's words echo in my head. You know, you don't have to keep buying your place in their lives, right? But it didn't feel like buying, it felt like investing. Like planting seeds for a garden that would finally bloom. When Ethan texted me the day before the party to confirm his arrival, it was just a thumbs up emoji again. I stared at it for a few minutes, wishing it had been something more. Even a simple thank you would have made me feel a little less invisible. The day of the party was flawless. The sky was unusually clear for March in Seattle, the bay sparkling in the afternoon sun. I arrived hours early to oversee setup. I triple-checked the seating chart, fluffed every table arrangement, and stood back admiring the room. It was perfect. I had made it perfect. Guests began arriving, and I moved around the room greeting old family friends and my mom's colleagues. I noticed something as I mingled. People kept telling me what a wonderful idea this was, but they always followed it with, "Your mother will be so happy Ethan made it." Ethan arrived right on cue, strolling in with his fiancée, both effortlessly charming, both magnetic in a way I had never mastered. My mom beamed when she saw him, her entire posture softening. I felt like a shadow standing beside them. I kept moving, refilling drinks, checking in with the chef, making sure the slideshow cued at the right time. No one saw how much I was working to hold it all together. No one asked if I needed a break. I told myself that was fine, I wasn't here to be noticed. I was here to make the day shine for her. When it was time for the speeches, I introduced Ethan first. I thought it would be a sweet gesture to let her favorite child speak before me. He smiled, that easy, practiced smile, and said Julia really did all the heavy lifting here, but it wouldn't be Mom's birthday if I didn't say a few words. The room laughed. They loved him. He spoke for less than 3 minutes, offered a generic, "You're the best, Mom," and everyone clapped as if he'd delivered the Gettysburg Address. When it was my turn, I stood behind the microphone, gripping the index cards I'd carefully written and rewritten the night before. I had crafted every word with precision, layering gratitude, with stories from childhood, adding moments that showed how much I knew her, really knew her. But when I looked out at the crowd, I saw it in their faces. I saw it in hers. They were already full. Full from Ethan's easy charm. Full from years of habit. Full from the story they'd always told themselves that Ethan was the heart of the family, and I was just the one who handled logistics. My voice trembled as I read the words I had so carefully prepared. I pushed through, even though I knew I was speaking into a void. When I finished, my mother gave me a polite smile and clapped softly, but it wasn't the same spark she had for Ethan. After cake, as the sun set over the water, I stepped outside to get some air. That's when I overheard them. I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to listen. But I heard Ethan laughing as he told his fiancée, "Julia is so predictable. She paid for everything without even blinking. All I had to do was show up." And then I heard my mother reply,
That's why we keep her close. She's useful. She always shows up.
Those words sliced through me like ice. I always show up. I always pay. But I'm never the one they choose. Some betrayals don't come with knives. They come with laughter when you realize the joke has always been you. I didn't set out to overhear anything that day. After Ethan's speech, I told myself I needed a break from the noise, from the smiling faces, from the heavy weight of pretending I belonged in that room. The banquet hall had a wraparound balcony overlooking the marina, and I slipped outside while most of the guests were busy watching the birthday video I had painstakingly put together. I leaned against the cool metal railing, letting the salty air settle the heat rising in my chest. I wasn't angry then, not yet. I was just tired. Tired of trying. Tired of chasing approval like a dog chasing its own tail. That's when I heard them. The balcony curved along the side of the building, and voices drifted from the far corner where Ethan and his fiancée Harper had tucked themselves away with my mom. At first, I didn't pay attention. I thought they were just chatting. But something about Ethan's laugh, it was sharp, dismissive, the kind of laugh people use when they're amused at someone's expense. I can't believe she covered everything, Ethan said, his voice laced with arrogance. The flights, the hotel, the party. I didn't even have to ask. She offered. Harper giggled. She really didn't question it. Julia's predictable. She always jumps at the chance to prove herself. Ethan shrugged. I mean, it works out for us, right? She makes things easy. Then my mom's voice joined in, soft, but clear. That's why we keep her close. She's useful. She always shows up. She always pays. You just have to let her think she's doing something important. Harper asked, Do you think she knows? Knows what? Ethan laughed again. That we don't actually need her? She's just convenient. Convenient. I clutched the railing, steadying myself as the world seemed to tilt under my feet. My lungs tightened. My heart thudded so loud, I thought they might hear it echoing across the balcony. All the years, all the sacrifices, all the carefully planned events and quietly paid bills. Convenient. Not loved, not valued, not chosen. Convenient. I wanted to step around the corner to confront them right there, but I froze. It wasn't fear. It was something worse, recognition. A small, aching part of me realized this wasn't new. This was the pattern I had never dared to see fully until now. Memories slammed into me like a freight train. The time I worked double shifts to pay Ethan's college application fees while my mom bragged about how resourceful he was. The birthday I missed because I was at the DMV helping him get his first car. The holidays I organized while they rolled their eyes at my meticulous lists behind my back. I had built my entire identity around being the one who showed up. The one who held it all together. The reliable, steady sister. The responsible daughter. But I was never the favorite. I was never the priority. I was the convenience. I slowly backed away, my heels clicking against the concrete in a rhythm that didn't match the storm raging inside me. I needed air. Real air. I walked toward the parking lot, fumbling for my keys, my chest tight and my throat raw with the effort of holding in the scream that begged to break free. When I reached my car, I collapsed into the driver's seat and finally let the tears come. Not the quiet, dignified tears of disappointment. No, these were guttural, soul-crushing sobs, the kind that rattle your bones and make your vision blur. How could I have been so blind? How could I have been so eager to believe that if I just gave enough, did enough, sacrificed enough, I would eventually earn my place? I wiped my face with the back of my hand, breathing in sharp gasps as I stared at my trembling fingers. This wasn't the first time they'd laughed about me. This wasn't the first time they'd used me. It was just the first time I'd heard it out loud. It was a cruel kind of gift, the truth. Because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. I didn't drive away. Not yet. I sat there until the party ended, until I saw them leaving together, laughing, walking toward the valet, like nothing had happened. Like I didn't matter. And maybe in their world, I didn't. But in mine, something shifted. I promised myself right then I would never let myself be their convenience again. The most painful truths don't scream, they whisper until you're finally quiet enough to hear them.
I didn't confront them that night. I wish I could say I stormed back inside and laid everything bare in front of the party guests, but I didn't. Instead, I sat in my car watching them from behind the glass, the weight of what I'd overheard pressing against my ribs like a vice. I drove home in silence. No music, no phone calls, just the sound of my own shallow breathing filling the car. The steering wheel felt cold and foreign beneath my fingers. I parked outside my house, but couldn't bring myself to go inside. I just sat there staring at the porch light I'd left on, as if I were still waiting for something to guide me in. That night, I didn't sleep. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying those words. She's useful. Convenient. She always pays. I rolled them over and over in my head like stones in a river, hoping the edges would eventually smooth out. But they didn't. They cut deeper with every memory that surfaced. I thought back to the time Ethan had called me panicked, saying he couldn't cover his rent. I had wired him money the same day. I remembered my mother's emergencies, the car repairs, the overdue utility bills, the sudden dental work that somehow always coincided with my tax refunds. I had been their safety net for so long, I didn't know who I was without their constant pulling. And maybe that was the hardest part to admit. I had built my identity around being needed. It wasn't just that they used me, it was that I let them. I participated in it. I enabled it because I thought that being necessary was the same thing as being loved. I started to see the timeline of my life through a new lens. I wasn't the generous sister. I wasn't the dutiful daughter. I was the backup plan, the reliable fallback, the one who showed up when everyone else stepped back. It burned. It scorched every part of me that had desperately wanted to believe I mattered. I wanted to call Leah, but it was well past midnight. I didn't know what I would even say. Hey, you were right. Turns out I've been the family ATM all along. I laughed, but it was sharp and humorless, the kind of laugh that comes from realizing you've been the punchline in your own story. The next morning, my mother texted me, "Thank you again for everything last night. It was beautiful." No mention of me. No mention of the speech I'd poured my heart into. Just a generic thank you, like I was the event planner she'd hired and forgotten to tip. I didn't respond. It wasn't that I wanted to cut them off, not yet. I wanted to understand. I wanted to see if this had been a one-time slip, or if it had always been this way, and I'd just been too busy earning their approval to notice. I tested it. When my mother called a week later asking if I could help with her credit card bill, I told her I couldn't. I didn't even offer an explanation. I just said, "No, not this time." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Oh," she said, her voice dipping slightly. "Well, I suppose I can figure something out." When Ethan called a few days after that, asking if I could co-sign for a new apartment lease, I declined. Seriously, he sounded like I had personally betrayed him. "You've always helped before." "Not this time," I repeated. And just like that, I felt the shift. Their calls became less frequent. The texts dwindled. When they did reach out, it wasn't to check on me, it was to see if I'd changed my mind. When I stayed firm, the silence stretched longer. The part of me that used to panic when they drifted away felt oddly calm. I wasn't losing them. I was losing the version of them I had clung to, the version I had built in my head to justify every sacrifice I made. For the first time in years, I had space. Space in my budget. Space in my weekends. Space in my mind. It felt empty at first, but slowly that space began to feel like something else. Freedom, peace, room to breathe. And maybe if I allowed it room to build something entirely new, something that didn't rely on being someone else's convenience, something that was finally fully mine. There's a certain silence that comes before a storm, the silence of deciding you will never go back to who you used to be. For weeks after the party, I stayed quiet. I answered calls when I wanted to. I ignored them when I didn't. I watched the distance grow like a slow, deliberate pulling of a thread I had spent my entire life weaving. But the moment I knew I couldn't stay silent forever,
came on a random Tuesday afternoon. Ethan called not to ask about me, but to follow up on his apartment application. "You've probably had time to think it over," he said, so sure, so entitled. "I'm ready to send you the paperwork for the cosign." There was no greeting, no question of whether I was okay. Just the assumption that I would cave like I always had. I didn't. "I'm not doing it," I said, steady but firm. "Come on, Julia. You've always helped me. This is just how our family works." It wasn't a request. It was a script one I had unknowingly performed for decades. "Not anymore," I said. "That version of our family doesn't work for me." He hung up. No fight, no debate. Just a deadline and a brutal silence that told me everything I needed to know. I thought maybe he'd call back, but he didn't. A few days later, my mom called. This time, she didn't start with small talk. She went straight to what she wanted. "I'm assuming you're covering my car insurance this quarter, as usual." It wasn't even phrased as a question. She had made me her line item a financial expectation disguised as family loyalty. "No, Mom, I'm not." Silence. Then came the guilt. "I gave up everything to raise you two. I went without so you could have what you needed. This is how you repay me." She didn't mention the late night shifts I had worked in high school. She didn't mention the scholarships I earned. She didn't mention that I had built my life while quietly paying for theirs. She only remembered what I no longer provided. "I'm not refusing to help because I don't care," I told her. "I'm refusing to help because I finally do." "Do what?" "Care about myself." The line went quiet again before she muttered something about being disappointed in me and hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time. I should have felt crushed, but instead, I felt strangely steady. The next time they called, I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. They weren't calling to check on me. They weren't calling to reconnect. They were calling to renegotiate my boundaries. But my boundaries weren't up for discussion anymore. A week later, I got a text from Ethan. "Nice knowing you." It was cold, sharp, designed to hurt. And for the first time, it didn't. I didn't reply. I didn't chase after the version of family I'd been conditioned to beg for. Instead, I called Leah. "I think I'm ready," I said, my voice trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of choosing something new. For what? To say it out loud. To tell them the truth. To have the conversation I should have had years ago. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. I ran into my mom and Ethan at a small local cafe a few days later. They were sitting together in a booth laughing at something I was sure I wasn't invited to understand. Our eyes met. For a brief second, I considered walking away. I considered letting the silence continue, letting the slow disappearance of our connection finish unraveling on its own. But I didn't. I walked straight to their table. "Julia," my mom said with a rehearsed warmth that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's been a while." "Not long enough," I replied, and my voice surprised me with its clarity. "Come sit," Ethan offered, but there was no real invitation in his tone. Just performance, just obligation. I stayed standing. "I overheard you both," I said, my words steady, measured sharp like glass. "At the birthday party. I heard exactly what you said about me." My mother's smile faltered. Ethan's jaw tensed. "You misunderstood." "No," I cut in. "I understood perfectly. I finally see who I've been to you. I was the safety net, the wallet, the reliable one. I was never the daughter you valued, or the sister you respected." "That's not fair," Ethan said, but he couldn't meet my eyes. "What's not fair is that I spent my life trying to earn something you never intended to give me." My mother's face flushed with frustration. "So what now? You're just walking away from your family." "No," I said. "I'm walking toward myself." I turned and walked out, feeling my heart pound, not from fear, but from the powerful rush of choosing myself for the first time. The conversation didn't heal everything, but it set me free. You don't always get to choose the family you're born into, but you can always choose who you build one with. After that cafe confrontation, my life didn't magically fall into place. I didn't walk out and instantly feel lighter. The ache lingered like an old bruise I kept pressing just to see if it still hurt. It did. But something else began to surface in those quiet days that followed a curiosity. A question I'd never allowed myself to ask. If I wasn't spending all my energy chasing their approval, what could I build instead? For the first time, my calendar wasn't filled with errands for Ethan or payment reminders from my mother. My phone was quieter. My weekends were suddenly mine. The silence, though uncomfortable at first, became fertile ground for something new. I started by reaching out to people I had pushed to the edges of my life, people who had patiently waited for me to see my own worth. Leah was the first. "Do you actually have a free Saturday?" she teased when I called. "Or is this another family emergency?" "No emergencies, just me." There was a long pause on the line. "I've been waiting to hear you say that for years." That weekend, we had brunch at a small cafe I'd driven past 100 times, but never stopped to enjoy. We spent hours catching up, real hours, not the half-present, anxious, clock-watching kind I had always given my friends in the past. It felt foreign to be wanted without needing to be useful. Leah wasn't the only one. Tyler, Ethan's ex-fiancé, reached out to me a month after the cafe confrontation. His message was simple: "I heard what happened. I hope you're okay." Tyler had always been kind. Looking back, I realized he had been one of the few people who saw me not as a utility, not as a backup plan, but as a person worth knowing. We met for coffee, and it was the first time in years I had a conversation with someone connected to my family where I didn't feel like I was performing. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner." Tyler admitted, his voice low. "I didn't know how deep it all ran." "Neither did I confessed. Over the following months, we became friends not through shared obligation, but through genuine connection. Tyler introduced me to his circle people who laughed without pretense, who invited me to dinner parties where I didn't have to bring a gift to earn my seat at the table. I realized I'd spent so long auditioning for love, I had forgotten what it felt like to simply be welcomed. I also grew closer to my neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn, a retired teacher who had lived 2 doors down for as long as I'd owned my house. I used to wave at her politely, always too busy, too rushed. But one day, I stopped to help her carry groceries inside, and something shifted. She invited me in for tea. One cup turned into weekly conversations about life books and her late husband. Mrs. Evelyn became a steady presence in my life, offering quiet wisdom without asking for anything in return. Slowly, a new family began to form around me, a family I chose, a family that chose me back. There were moments when grief would sneak in, usually during holidays. The first Thanksgiving without my mother's passive-aggressive texts, the first Christmas without Ethan's last-minute financial crises, they left a hollow ache I didn't expect. Even painful patterns leave a mark when they're suddenly gone. But Leah reminded me of something I now hold close. "You're not grieving them," she said gently one evening over mulled wine. "You're grieving the version of them you wanted so badly to be real." She was right. I wasn't missing my actual family. I was missing the fantasy I'd built, the imaginary version where love wasn't transactional and showing up meant something. As winter melted into spring, I filled my home with new traditions: game nights, Sunday brunches, volunteer work at the local shelter where I met people who, like me, were creating their own versions of family from scratch. And you know what surprised me the most? No one kept a tally. No one measured my worth by what I could give. They simply showed up again and again because they wanted to. The woman I used to be would have mistaken this for luck. The woman I was becoming understood this was the life I had finally chosen to build. I wasn't anyone's safety net anymore. I was my own sanctuary. Healing doesn't come in one grand moment. It comes quietly in the life you build when no one's watching. It's been over a year since that birthday party, the day that shattered the version of family I'd spent my life trying to protect. I thought that moment would break me, but looking back now, I realize it saved me. The Julia who walked away from that cafe conversation wasn't fully healed. She was exhausted, angry, and unsure of what came next. But she was done being used. That's where healing began, not in confidence, but in exhaustion. I was simply too tired to keep playing a role that never fit me. The distance from my mother and Ethan didn't shrink over time. It stretched wider. There were no sudden apologies, no tearful reunions, just occasional texts that felt obligatory rather than heartfelt. On Christmas morning, I received a message from my "Merry Christmas"
Hope you're well. No guilt trip, no requests, no mention of money. It should have felt like progress. And maybe it was. But I realized something important when I stared at that text. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of what they could have been. I missed the family I invented in my head, the one where I was loved for simply existing, not for what I could provide. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I spent that morning preparing brunch for my chosen family, Leah Tyler, Mrs. Evelyn, and a few new friends who had no place to go that holiday. We filled my small kitchen with laughter and the smell of cinnamon rolls fresh out of the oven. The kind of holiday where no one was quietly keeping score. When I finally texted my mother back, my reply was short, "Merry Christmas. I hope you're doing well too." Nothing more. No invitation to reconnect. No opening for old patterns to creep back in. Boundaries, I learned, are the love letters you write to yourself. In the months that followed, I built a life I had never known I was allowed to have. I started a Sunday hiking group with a few coworkers. I joined a pottery class I had always told myself I was too busy for. I even took a solo trip to the Oregon coast, where I spent days walking along the cliffs and writing in a leather-bound journal that became a quiet companion on the journey back to myself. There were nights when the old ache would resurface, usually in the form of a question that had haunted me for years. Was I too harsh? Did I give up on them too soon? But healing taught me that guilt and growth can live in the same room. You can mourn what you lost and still protect what you've built. One evening, sitting by the window with a cup of chamomile tea, I found myself writing a letter I never intended to send. A letter to the younger version of me, the girl who spent her teenage years fixing broken things that weren't hers to fix. Dear younger Julia, you've spent your life trying to be enough. You've measured your worth in sacrifices in dollars, sent in errands, run in silence, kept. I want you to know something no one ever told you: you were already enough. You didn't need to buy their love. You didn't need to earn your place. The people who truly love you will never keep a running total. They will never ask you to prove yourself to stay. They will simply stay. It's okay to walk away from people who only call when they need something. It's okay to say no without explaining. It's okay to choose peace over proximity. The version of family you've been chasing is not the only version that exists. There are people out there who will meet you in the middle, not because of what you can do for them, but because they see you, they value you, and they choose you over and over. Your life will not collapse if you stop holding up the walls for everyone else. You will not be alone. You will be free. Love your future self. When I finished writing, I closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf next to a growing collection of small reminders of this new life. A handmade mug from pottery class, a seashell from the Oregon coast, a photograph from our last Sunday brunch, where everyone is laughing, genuinely laughing.
This is the life I chose.
Not perfect,
But honest.
Not inherited, but built. And maybe that's the real story I've been trying to tell all along. Not about who I left behind, but about who I finally became when I did. I truly believed that if I just gave enough, worked hard enough, showed up, enough people would eventually see my worth. I used to think being needed was the same as being valued. But now I know they are not the same. What I've learned painfully, but honestly, is that real love isn't transactional. It doesn't come with a ledger. It doesn't hand out affection based on how much you sacrifice. Real love stands even when you say no. Real love stays even when you have nothing to offer but your time, your presence, your imperfect self. For years, I confused usefulness with belonging. I thought if I kept solving everyone's problems, they'd eventually see me as irreplaceable. But the truth is, if people only keep you close because you're convenient, you're not family, you're a resource. It took me far too long to understand this. People who truly value you won't make you feel like you have to audition for their care. You don't need to buy your seat at someone's table. If you do, that's not your table. It never was. Walking away from my family wasn't easy. Honestly, it still hurts sometimes.
It's not like flipping a switch where the pain disappears overnight. Setting boundaries, especially with family, is a messy, complicated journey. There are days when you wonder if you were too harsh, if maybe you should have tried harder, if maybe they really did care in their own broken way. But here's what I remind myself. People who love you will not abandon you simply because you stop paying their bills or doing their favors. People who love you will be more invested in your happiness than in your bank account. I wish I'd learned sooner that saying no doesn't make you selfish. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. There's this idea, especially in some families, that love must come with endless obligation, that you must endure everything to prove your loyalty. But sometimes, the greatest act of love you can give to yourself is to step away, to preserve your peace, to honor the version of yourself that has been buried under everyone else's expectations. You get to build your own family. You get to choose the people who show up for you not out of habit, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. And sometimes those people won't share your last name, and that's okay. The family I have now isn't the one I was born into. It's the one I built slowly, intentionally, with people who don't keep score. So if you're someone who feels trapped in the cycle of overgiving, if you're chasing love that always seems just out of reach, I want to tell you what I wish someone had told me. You are already enough. You don't have to prove your worth through sacrifice. You don't have to bankrupt your soul to be accepted. Sometimes, the hardest, bravest thing you can do is to step back and ask, if I stopped being useful to them tomorrow, would they still be here? If the answer is no, you already know what you need to do. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to start building the life and the family that you truly deserve.